Today, as we remember the sacrifice of people involved in various conflicts, we focus on what became known as the Great War, the war to end wars. Through words, songs, music and images, we hope to give you space for your own personal thoughts. And in this year, 100 years since the start of World War I, we will also particularly remember the young men from Crosshouse and Ayrshire who died in that terrible conflict. The young men from Crosshouse Village School, whose photographs we will show later, could have come from any village, town or city in Scotland. Most of them will have been born during the last decade of the 19th century, born in the mid-1890s. They were probably never aware that something had happened about 55 years previously that would change their lives and the lives of all around them. In that year, 1839, the Treaty of London was signed by Britain to protect the neutrality of Belgium. In 1914, the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne, Franz Ferdinand and his wife, were assassinated in Bosnia. Now you have to pay attention here because the following makes no sense at all. But of course, wars don't. Franz Ferdinand was assassinated. Austria-Hungary declared war on Serbia. Germany declared war on Russia. Germany declared war on France. Germany invaded neutral Belgium. Now remember the Treaty of London. And then Britain declared war on everyone who had declared war. John Jackson of the Queen's Own Cameron Highlanders said in his book, Memoir of a Tommy, that World War I was a singing war because it was a marching war. 3 miles in 50 minutes, 10 minutes rest and then on again. 12 to 15 miles of full day's marching with rifle, ammunition, pack and afterwards steel helmets to be carried. There were no lorries to carry the men's kit until right at the end of the war. March, 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 tramp of feet, sometimes on the cobbled French roads, with the iron-shod boots of the soldiery ringing on those ancient stones, sometimes shuffling along the duckboards through the long communication trenches. Salisbury Plain was the place chosen for much of the training of these raw recruits. The training mainly consisted of firing practice and marching, 120 steps to the minute. They don't need a military band to march. They needed a sergeant major, or better still, a drummer.
Oh
Kitchener was on the lookout for volunteers. Millions of volunteers. Your king and country need you. During this time, the young men of Crosshouse would be doing the kind of things that all young men do, and it would probably include courting young lassies. So they probably didn't care much about talk of war. But soon they were forced to listen. When they saw the recruiting posters, when they heard the music hall songs, and when they talked to their friends. There would be only one thing they would have wanted to do, and that would have been to enlist in a Scottish regiment. The recruiting posters were telling them, "Be quick, or you'll miss the war and the glory that goes with it."
Down the road and o'er the bridge I ran as fast as my legs could take me, just behind my friends Adair or the British Army. Just out front was young MacDonald, brave as a fool and twice as carefree, racing neck and neck together, laughing all the way. Sign here, boys, your lucky son, you might get there before we've won. All you heroes get in line to join the British Army. Passchendaele and the Somme, they'll not wait, so don't be long, and you'll be home by Christmas, back before you've gone. Black Watch, Highland, Royal Scots Grey, the whole town cheered as we marched away. Bring us back a medal, bring us back a medal, bring us back a medal for the victory parade.
The wisdom of the day was that the war would be over by Christmas. We now know that it wasn't. Why have we been singing soldiers' songs in this act of remembrance? The answer, in part, is that they give us some insight into how they were feeling. The first day of the 1916 Somme offensive was the bloodiest in the history of the British Army. More than 20,000 were killed and 60,000 injured. It lasted from 1st July 1916 until November 16th. With static actions such as the Somme offensive, one would imagine that the Scottish soldier had every reason to hate their enemy. But the songs did not reflect this. Most of the bitterness was directed at their superiors, and few mentioned the enemy across no man's land. Perhaps one of the most moving episodes of World War I is an event that was never reported at the time and which has since become known as the Christmas Truce. This happened just a few short weeks from now, but 100 years ago, in that first winter of the war in 1914.
This part of the story you may perhaps find out more for yourselves later. Once the fighting of the First Battle of Ypres died down in November 1914, British units that had been holding the Ypres salient were relieved by French ones. By December, the BEF, that is the British Expeditionary Force, had moved and was holding a continuous sector of the Western Front from a little south of Saint-Elio to La Bassée Canal in Givenchy. British forces in France were considered of the shattered units of the regular army, most of which had been but destroyed at Ypres, and which were in the process of being rebuilt by receiving new drafts. The stats and dull nature of the trench warfare and the close proximity of the enemy caused many men to be curious about the men they were fighting. Although they rarely ever saw each other, they could hear each other talking over the trenches and could smell breakfast being cooked. They were certainly facing the same conditions of wet and cold, and in a strange way, a mutual respect developed. There were occasional shouted conversations between trenches, and the odd instance of exchange of goods, although to be adventurous was foolhardy for men who were continually shot by sniper fire. On the 5th of December 1914, General Sir Horace Smith Dorrien issued an instruction to commanders of all divisions. It is during this period that the greatest danger to the morale of troops exists. Experience of this and of every other war proves undoubtedly that troops in trenches in close proximity to the enemy slide very easily into permanent, to do so, into a live and let live theory of life. Officers and men sink into a military lethargy for which it is difficult to arouse them when the moment of great sacrifice again arises. The attitude of our troops can be readily understood and to a certain extent commands sympathy. Such an attitude is, however, most dangerous, for it discourages initiatives in commanders and destroys the offensive spirit in all ranks. The Corps Commander therefore directs divisional commanders to impress on his subordinate commanders the absolute necessity of encouraging offensive spirit, friendly intercourse with the enemy, unofficial armistices, however tempting and amusing, they may be absolutely prohibited. In the early weeks of December 1914, tremendous volumes of mail and gifts for the troops were sent from homes in the United Kingdom and Germany. King George V sent a Christmas card to every soldier, sailor and nurse. The Princess Mary Fund dispatched a gift to every serving soldier. Throughout December, under strong French pressure to take the initiative, the army was ordered into a series of small piecemeal attacks that proved to be very costly. Cut down by rifle and machine gun fire and unable to enter enemy trenches, the attacking units left many casualties lying in no man's land and on the enemy barbed wires. On the 20th of December, there was a local truce on the front of the 22nd Brigade. Germans beginning to talk to British wounded from no man's land. On the 23rd of December, a German soldier, Karl Ardagh, reports that both sides have been heard singing hymns in the trenches. German troops coming into the line bring Christmas trees. Some men begin to place them on the parapets of the fire trenches. On the 24th of December, Christmas Eve, the weather changed to hard frost. This makes trench conditions a little more bearable. German troops coming into the line during this time. During the afternoon and the early evening, British infantry are astonished to see many Christmas trees with candles and paper lanterns on enemy parapets. There is much singing of carols and hymns and the popular songs, and gradually exchange of communication and even meetings in some areas. Many of these meetings are to arrange collection of bodies. In other places, firing continues. Battalion officers are uncertain how to react. In general, they maintain precautious. The night brings a clear, still air with a hard frost. On the 25th of December 1914, Christmas Day, men of the 20th Brigade buried their dead of the attacks on the 18th of December, alongside German soldiers engaged in the same activity. Units behind the lines attended church services and have in most cases arranged Christmas dinners, which are taken in barns and shattered buildings. In the front line, the fraternisation of Christmas Eve is continued throughout the day. Not all units know about it, and it is not universal, but is widespread over at least half of the British front. Many bodies have been lying out in no man's land, are buried, some in joint burials. Many records the strange and wonderful events. Many men exchanged tokens or addresses with German soldiers, many who speak English. As night fell, things grew quiet as men fell back into their trenches to take whatever Christmas meal that had been provided for them. On the 26th of December 1914, Boxing Day, British and German troops met in no man's land. In some areas, the friendly spirit was resumed. Gradually, however, officers and men of both sides began to resume normal trench caution. The atmosphere in general remained relaxed as brigade and battalion officers took a pragmatic view of events. The chance was taken to carry out work without, otherwise that would not have been done and could have been hazardous. By now, however, news of the truce was reaching higher commands. General Sir Horace Smith Dorrien requested, particularly of those units and officers who took part, with a view to disciplinary action, in the event no action was taken against any unit or officer. As New Year approached, the weather turned wet, with rain, sleet and storms. There were instances of men disappearing in the flooded trenches. After that, the soldiers found it harder to fight each other, recognising that although on opposite sides of a conflict, they had much in common. In some areas, the friendly mood remained for several days, and there was also almost no firing, although open fraternisation gradually died away. On New Year's Eve, there was a certain amount of singing and exchanging of messages, but no truce as such.
So why was there so much poetry in the First World War? Was it just boredom, or was the act of committing memories to paper some kind of necessary therapy? One thing is certain. The soldiers who returned from the Great War found it difficult to tell the stories from these obscene times. The next song is a relatively modern song, written in the last 40 years, although many people think it dates back to World War I. It stands alongside many of the great poetic writings of the war and tells the story of someone visiting the war graves of France and Belgium and sitting down in front of one of the graves to rest and reflect.
How d'ye do, young Willie McBride? Do you mind if I sit here down by your graveside and rest for a while in the warm summer sun? I've been walking all day and I'm nearly done. I see by your gravestone you were only 19 when you joined the Great Fallen in 1916. Well, I hope you died quick and I hope you died clean. Or Willie McBride, was it slow and obscene? Did you leave a young wife or a sweetheart behind? In some faithful heart is your memory enshrined. And although you died in 1916, in that faithful heart are you forever 19? Or are you a stranger without even a name, closed in forever behind the glass pane, in an old photograph torn and tattered and stained, and fading to yellow in a brown leather frame? Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they play the fife lowly? Did the rifles fire o'er you as they lowered you down? Did the bugles sing the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the flutes of the forest? The sun shines now on the green fields of France. The warm summer breeze makes the red poppies dance. And look how the sun shines from under the cloud. No gas, no barbed wire, no guns firing now. But here in this graveyard, it's still no man's land. The countless white crosses in mute witness stand to man's blind indifference to his fellow man, and a whole generation who were butchered and damned. I can't help but wonder now, Willie McBride, do those who lie here really know why they died? Did they believe when they answered the call? Did they really believe that this war would end wars? For the sorrow, the suffering, the glory, the shame, the killing and the dying were all done in vain. For young Willie McBride it all happened again, and again and again, and again and again. Did they beat the drum slowly? Did they play the fife lowly? Did the rifles fire o'er you as they lowered you down? Did the bugles sing the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the flutes of the forest? Did the bugles sing the last post in chorus? Did the pipes play the flutes of the forest?
One of the sad facts of the war was that it was the young men who first answered the call. Any death is a tragedy, but were it the older generation that went off to war, then the longer-term impact would be less. Older men would have lived their lives, and the next generation could take their place in the natural order of life. World War I, perhaps more than any other war, took the cream of a generation. 100 years is a long time, but we are still feeling the effects. We are told that if we don't learn from history, then we are bound to repeat the mistakes of the past. In this next section, we will show photographs of many of the young men of Crosshouse who fell in this conflict. and will give you space for your own thoughts. Many of these names will be familiar in the village. In the statistics of war, when we talk about tens or even hundreds of thousands of casualties, it is easy to forget the impact on individuals or small communities. One of the lines of that last song spoke about the soldier in the photograph being forever 19. The following two pieces of writing that we will read out speak loudly to us through the years. One from a leader in post-war Turkey, one of the countries where perhaps of the young men from Crosshouse found themselves in the disaster that we remember as Gallipoli. It speaks of the unity and death of a generation slain and gives us a powerful message to us all. The second piece is more personal, an inscription on a war grave, easily a message to us all. The first is from Kemal Ataturk, writing from Turkey. Heroes who shed their blood and lost their lives, you are now lying in the soil of a friendly country. Therefore rest in peace. There is no difference between the Johnnies and the Mehmets to us, where they lie side by side, here in this country of ours. You, the mothers who sent their sons from faraway countries, wipe away your tears. Your sons are now lying in our bosom and are in peace. After having lost their lives on this land, they have become our sons as well. The second message is an inscription from a single grave, a personal tribute to a son, or brother, or nephew, or friend, or comrade. To the world he was but one of many, but to us he was all our world.
Where have all the young girls gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young girls gone? They've gone for husbands, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Where have all the young men gone? Long time passing. Where have all the young men gone? Long time ago. Where have all the young men gone? Gone for soldiers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the soldiers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the soldiers gone? Gone to graveyards, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time passing. Where have all the graveyards gone? Long time ago. Where have all the graveyards gone? Gone for flowers, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn?
Where have all the flowers gone? Long time passing. Where have all the flowers gone? Long time ago. Where have all the flowers gone? Young girls pick them, everyone. When will they ever learn? When will they ever learn? When will we ever learn? When will we ever learn?
Much of the subject matter of today has been difficult. We have attempted to honour the men and women who fought in wars without glorifying war itself. We come towards the end of this act of remembrance with thoughts of hope and the prospect for a better future. We'll end with the words of Harry Lauder describing his feelings when he received a telegram to tell him that his son, John, had died. And we hear the song of hope that Harry wrote as a result of his personal tragedy. Captain John Lauder, killed in action, December the 28th, official, War Office. That was all it said. I knew nothing of how my boy had died or where, save that it was for his country. The black despair that had been hovering over me for hours closed down now and enveloped all my sense. Everything was unreal. For a time, I was quite numb. But then, as I began to realise and to visualise what it was to mean in my life
that my boy was dead. There came great pain. The iron of realization slowly seared every word of that curt telegram upon my heart. I said it to myself over and over again. And as I whispered to myself, as my thoughts took form over and over, the one terrible word, dead.
Thank you.
W. Cummings McMillan, John Milligan, John Montague, David Riggs Newlands, James Owens, Robert Ross, Robert Shearer, David Stewart, James Stewart, David Stevenson, Andrew Struthers, John Tate, William Wardrow, George Carlyle, Andrew Y. Young, William Hunter, George Shields, Thomas Walker, Robert White, Robert Burley, Charles Hanna, William Lamont, Robert Owens, James Kevin, F. Cummings, John Hunter, A. Livingston, James Ross, George Stewart, James R. Bear, William N. Neal, James Patterson, John Anderson, David Armour, John Hall, John Barnes, Hugh Barry, James Brown, Robert Brown, John Cole, Thomas Connolly, John Cook, Robert Donegan, James Douglas, James Ewart, John Reed Ferrells, John Gibson, Samuel Day, M. A. Hillhouse, James Kennedy, Joseph McCourt, Hugh McGee.
The peace of God, which is beyond our understanding, keep your hearts and minds in the knowledge and love of God and of his Son, Jesus Christ our Lord. And the blessing of God Almighty, the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, be with you and remain with you and all those you love and care for, today and always.